All right, welcome to the next episode of the Brio in the Box podcast. Very special guest today. My favorite farmer, Arlie from Farm 140 is joining us today. How are you doing today, Arlie?
I'm great. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's I've been a huge fan of the CrossFit community for a super long time now, and it's a very natural friendship to have. Yep,
Yeah, I feel like as we've gotten to know each other, we were like, oh, ditto to so many of these things. Have you read this book? Yes, I
totally.
have. Very much on
Yes,
parallel tracks of the same vibe. So, tell us about Farm
absolutely.
140. Where is it? Let's start with that.
Sure, yeah. So Farm 140 is just about 15 minutes west of Saskatoon, just south of the village of Vanscoy. And we decided to call our Farm 140 because of the acreage of land that we have here. So we originally started this farm with 140 acres of land. And by Saskatchewan standards, that's an incredibly small land base, actually. Most farms in Saskatchewan are way bigger, like thousands of acres, 10,000 acres, not unusual, 20,000 acres, not unusual. But I just thought it was a cool thing to highlight because when you focus on really growing food, you can grow a huge amount of food on 140 acres of land. So that's why we're called
Yeah,
that.
that's super cool. How long have you had
Yeah.
Farm 140?
Well, I mean, it's hard to pinpoint exactly when, but we started as a hobby farm. I used to work in the city and we moved out to the farm in 2007, but it was about 2013 that I left my city job and decided to really make our farm a business.
So tell me about that journey. What was it that got you interested in starting it as a hobby farm in the first place? And then how did it grow to what it is today?
Sure, yeah. So I grew up on a farm and I enjoyed it, but I certainly took it for granted, as most farm kids do. And so after I graduated high school, I went to college and I studied water resources engineering, and I worked as an environmental consultant for quite a few years and just was pretty concerned about the environment and wanted to do my part to help in any way I could. And I loved that job, but we moved out to an acreage. My husband and I tried to live in the city, but we were like the country mice trying to live in the city. It just didn't work for us. So we bought just a small acreage outside of the city and started to grow our own food and just kind of discovered people like Alan Savory and Joel Salatin and these farmers that were talking about how agriculture can be such a positive influence on the environment, and kind of just fell down that rabbit hole and started feeling a bit disillusioned with what I was doing at work. I didn't really feel like I was affecting the change that I set out to do. And I felt like farming just answered so many questions for me that I was having at the time. Like, how do I stay healthy and active? How do I feed myself and my family the healthiest food possible? How do I help the environment? And it just seemed like farming had all of those answers.
So tell me more about that, your philosophy that kind of brings in your farming background, your environmental background, your desire to, like you said, bring the best food to your family, and how that's built the philosophy of how you run Farm 140 now.
Yeah, so I guess if I was to pinpoint a moment, there was a workshop that I did. It was a 3 day intensive workshop called You Can Farm with Joel Salatin. And that was so inspirational. Like he just was an example of a farmer that was really doing it, like really just doing that diverse farming model with all the different animals and direct marketing. And I mean, like I said, I grew up on a farm, but we weren't doing those types of activities, which I found really exciting at the time. Just like really having that super short food chain, I guess. Just that really
Hmm.
direct link to where your food is coming from. So that was huge. And yeah, at the time I was working in the city, and we were also having babies at that time. We have two children who are older now, but that was when I was kind of going on mat leaves and coming back working half time, and just found it harder and harder to do that commute to the city, and just wanting to be at the
Yeah.
farm. And started selling, growing extra food and selling to friends and family, and then they wanted to buy more, and their friends wanted to buy, and then all of a sudden it was kind of, we realized, hey, this could be an actual business.
Yeah. So people might be familiar with Joel Salatin. He's in Michael Pollan's book, The Omnivore's Dilemma. He's been featured in Sacred Cow, both Rob Wolf and Diana Rogers' book, and then their documentary, if that's correct. I see him pop up on social media. He's been on
That's right.
podcasts. He's been on Joe Rogan. It's White Oak Pastures. Is that his business?
Yeah.
And now I think has become a
So White Oak
multi-generational.
Pastures is Will Harris. Sorry
Oh, I'm
to
getting them
interrupt you.
confused. Okay.
Yeah, White Oak.
Yeah, no, no, please
Yeah,
do.
but Will Harris is such an incredible, he's an incredible author and speaker too. I'm a huge fan of Will Harris. I discovered him later, but Joel Salatin is Polyface Farm. And
Oh,
yeah, he's
Polyface Farm.
in the southern states too somewhere. But yeah, they're both Will Harris. There's so many amazing mentors out there, if you look for them.
Yeah. And so this style or philosophy goes by a few names like regenerative agriculture, management intensive farming, managed ecosystem farming. Tell us more about how that works on the farm.
Yeah, one of the kind of buzzwords, I guess you can call it, that really resonates with us, and only maybe because it was one of the first ones we came to, was holistic management. So that's kind of coined by Alan Savory, and I mean, I like it because the name sums up kind of what it is about. It's you're managing your farm as a whole. Like in nature, nothing functions on its own. You never ever see anything in nature. It's just like one plant growing on its own. It's this incredible symbiosis of plants, bacteria, fungi, animals. Like it's all functioning together, and humans are a part of that. Humans aren't separate from that. And
Hmm.
so, just when we're managing the farm, we're trying to think, how are all these things interacting, and how can we just help that along and not be a roadblock or be a problem in that beautiful system that's already, showing us the way.
So you mentioned earlier that you're able to produce a huge amount of food off of 140. What are all of the things that you produce on the farm and how does that work all together?
So we've grown our land base over the years. We obviously have, well, not obviously, but we do have more than 140 acres now. But we still 140 acres is still the land base that we live on. That's what I call our homestead. And so that's where we grow all of our vegetables and fruits, which, we have fruits. It's crazy when I think back to when I was a kid. I think, what types of fruits did we get in Saskatchewan? We had really horrible tasting crab apples and raspberries and Saskatoons and rhubarb. And nowadays we can grow cherries and plums and apricots and grapes. And so I've been, yeah, establishing an orchard over the past several years. The U of S has an amazing fruit program, so they've really opened up the fruit world for us Saskatchewan cold dwellers. And then yeah, in the
Yeah, that's cool.
vegetable garden we grow pretty much every vegetable under the sun. I mean, you can really grow almost everything in Saskatchewan. So we grow tons of vegetables, and honestly, it's mostly for our own family to eat. Like we do a ton of freezing and canning and drying, and we have a cold storage room. So even though it's April, or at the very end of the garden season, but we're still eating out of our garden right now. We still have lots of
That's
cellared
amazing.
vegetables and canned and frozen things. So and then I just always grow vegetables, way too many vegetables than my family can possibly consume. And then any extra is getting sold to restaurants in Saskatoon, or we sell a few things at the Little Market Box and Saskmain Marketplace. But the vegetables is not even the main focus of our farm. The main focus of our farm is grass-fed beef and lamb and pasture-raised pork and grass fed laying hens, and we have honeybees, and then recently we've added more grain land. But really, it's the livestock component that has been the core of our business from the beginning.
And so, how does grass fed beef and lamb differ from the way conventional or like the factory farming system would work?
So cows and sheep are herbivores. They were designed to just eat grass and grass alone. And it was a beautiful system that really was the case on the prairies for centuries and centuries. You know, it was just that's the prairie landscape. It was managed by herbivores, and so that's what cows and sheep are meant to eat. But nowadays, it's very, very common to finish cattle and sheep in feedlot systems, so giving them a lot of grain. And they certainly like grain, just as humans like simple carbs. It's sort of similar for them. They'll
Yep.
happily eat it. But what happens to them is similar to what happens to us if we eat lots of potato chips and candy, is they get fat. And so some people want that. Some people really want their steak to be marbled and fat, but it's you can imagine that it's not the best for us to consume it, and it's not good for the animal's health either. So yeah, it's a very different product at the end of the day, especially pork. I think that's one of the ones that I noticed the biggest difference. Just
Hmm.
raising an animal in a confinement operation versus they're getting outside, they're getting vitamin D, they're getting lots of exercise every day, they're eating a totally varied diet, and so you can imagine the contrast is huge.
Yeah. And I mean, that's where my nutrition nerd brain goes with that about the quality, the nutritional quality of what is the end product there, especially with pork. Pork is a monogastric animal, more similar to humans. And so when they eat a lot of corn and soy, those high omega 6 grains and seeds end up in their fat as they do in humans as well. And that end product, commercial, like industrially fed pork, can have a linoleic acid and omega 6 content on par with canola oil. So when you get, this is how I always describe to people, when you get a bacon and at room temperature, it's really oily, like it seems it's not a solid anymore. That's a high amount of those polyunsaturated fats that are more liquid at room temperature. But when you get a really good quality pork or bacon, like from your farm, at room temperature, it's a solid. The fat is the structure of the way it's supposed to be, which is a higher percentage of saturated fats and a lower percentage of those omega 6, linoleic acid, the polyunsaturated fatty acid. So I completely agree with you that the quality is apparent when you look at the meat, when you handle it, when you look at the fat, when you get the ground beef, and the taste of it is different. It tastes
Yeah.
more like, it's hard to describe. It just tastes like meat should, if that makes sense. And there's, lots of
Well,
the
it has a
biochemical data to
stronger
support
beefy
it. It's
flavor.
different.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
I mean that in a good way. It tastes like what food should taste like, because there's the fat is different, the quality of the protein is different, the iron and all the, micronutrients and minerals that are in there. Even people like to talk about phytochemicals, like plants are the only source of phytochemicals. Grass-fed beef is higher in those phytochemicals that are good for our immune system and maybe help us fight cancer and all kinds of wonderful benefits. It's not exclusive to the plant world that you get those things from. So lots of nutritional benefits to eating
Absolutely.
meat that's produced the right way.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've had it on my mind to do more testing. My
Mm,
nerdy science brain would love to do more testing on the products, and I have it on my to-do list to reach out to somebody from the university. But I have a friend in Alberta that raises pasture-raised pork, and he did that study, and he found that his pork, the fat in his lard was very similar to olive oil in the omega 3 to 6
mm.
ratio. So it's pretty wild that you could be getting those types of ratios out of pork, which lots of people think is like so bad for you. It's like, well,
Yeah.
it's actually, lard can be a very healthy fat. I mean, a heck of a
Yeah.
lot healthier than canola oil. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a totally different
Especially holding
product.
up to high heat cooking as well. The seed oils, the omega 6s are so unstable when you have more monounsaturated and saturated fats, much more stable to high heat cooking. So even old school treats. Like I remember my great grandma would make, she called them dough gods. So she would make the bread dough from scratch and then deep fry them. And we'd make it like once or twice a year. And
Hmm.
it was always lard, right? You used real fats. That's what they were used to. And on the farm, they would never dream of using like a plastic bottled seed oil or canola oil or something like that. So, and there's a particular taste to those things. They're so much more rich and
No, no, of
satisfying in a
course
way
not.
that you only want to eat one or two. You don't want to eat a dozen of them, you know? Real food, I think, definitely has that benefit. So
Absolutely.
let's talk
Yeah,
about the economics of
absolutely.
raising food the right way. It's no it's no secret that grass-fed beef, pastured pork is more expensive than the industrially produced stuff. What what does that look like in terms of doing things right? Where do the extra costs go? And then why is it important for people to like vote with their dollars in the right way?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a interesting thing because you kind of want to think that buying something local should be cheaper. And in a way there are certain savings for sure, but I think it just comes down to, like, for one thing, scale, so you can imagine, in a big factory type butcher shop, there would be some efficiency with a huge scale when they're butchering like a pig every 20 minutes or something. But I use an artisanal local butcher shop, and there's literally a person with a knife, like cutting the meat, So just
Mm-hmm.
my butcher bill is astronomically higher, which it needs to be because there's a human doing it. There's a human being actually cutting it. So that's one big
Mm-hmm.
one. And then with our animals, we're doing rotational grazing with them in the summer and in the winter, actually. So what that looks like is, instead of giving the animals one big, huge field for the whole summer, we break that field into small temporary pens, and we have our cattle and sheep grazing together. They're actually mixed right together. And so we do this rotational grazing just because we've found that there's tons of studies showing that it's just so beneficial for the soil health, the forage health. It really helps with water infiltration and waking up the soil biology. If you give that pasture that intense graze, and the animals are grazing everything, weeds and desirable species all together, they're fertilizing it with their manure and urine. And then the other really key piece is to get them off of it and let that pasture rest and regrow before they visit it again. So obviously that takes more work. There's needs to be a human being moving that fence, moving that
Mm-hmm.
water all the time, but it's totally worth it. We've seen huge gains in our pastures on this farm over the last 10 years or so of doing that. And then I mentioned we do it in the winter too. So obviously in Saskatchewan we don't have grass growing in the winter. So to raise grass-fed beef, we have to feed them grass in the form of hay, in the form of dried hay. But again, instead of feeding them that hay in a feedlot in the exact same place where they have to coexist with their waste all the time, and they're more likely to get parasites and sick because they're in a gross environment, we spread the
Mm-hmm.
hay out throughout a big field, like the size that they would be in the summer, and we give them one row of hay each week, and it encourages that to be spread out over a huge land base, and it encourages the animals to be walking sometimes up to a mile for water, and they're staying active, they're staying healthy, right? So instead of just standing by the feed trough and just eating and not moving, they're staying healthy, they're distributing those nutrients throughout the farm in the best possible way.
Yeah, that's really cool. Does it take longer to bring an animal to its full weight when you do it the right way versus an industrial way?
Yeah, so it's just like you can imagine humans, they're gonna grow heavier on a junk food diet. So yeah, it takes us almost 2 years to finish a grass-fed beef, compared to, I think in a feedlot they can get it down to like 14 months or something like that. It's quite a lot less. And then just the weight, the finished weight is more on a feedlot beef. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
the yield is less on a grass-fed beef, but yeah, I think if you look at nutrients. It's probably more, even though the total weight is less.
You mentioned that your education was in water resource and engineering. I know some people are critical of, beef are bad for the environment and it takes all this water to raise, 1 pound of beef and that kind of thing. Talk to us about how that works when things stay in the cycle and the ecosystem.
Yeah, it's definitely one thing I love getting into conversation about because I just think back to the way that the prairies would have looked 200 years ago and all the time before that. It would have been grasslands, perennial grasslands, and bison. And those bison were a totally core element of the natural ecosystem, totally necessary. And there's been I've read that there was more bison on the prairies in the past than there are beef on the prairies today. So if you're just
Wow.
looking at purely numbers, we have less. We have less herbivores today in our sick environment than we had bison previously in an extremely healthy environment. So right there, I
Mm.
just think no, there's no way that that argument could possibly be true. The other thing that I often think about is like I think my farm is a very closed loop. Like we really try to not import or export a lot of things into and off of this farm. So I just think we have a well, we get the water out of the ground on the land that we stand on and we pump it up to the surface and the animals drink it and then they urinate it back out. And I just I don't really see water exiting this closed loop. Like I don't know where it's going. I don't see it leaving. We're not tied into a municipal water system and we're not tied into a municipal sewer system. So I have a very different mindset about that, I guess, because I don't see
Yeah,
anything
closed loop. Right.
disappearing or, yeah, it's a loop. It's a loop. I would challenge people to look into the water requirements of growing things like almonds in California, or, I don't think that focusing on how much water beef requires is the only thing that matters. And then
Yeah.
also, I just really think people need to look at it from a holistic lens because growing grass-fed beef inevitably means that you have grasslands, and grasslands are one of the hugest carbon sinks we have, and they enable water infiltration. They enable us to heal the water cycle, which is terribly broken. So to just look at the amount of water that the cow is consuming is such a skewed. You need to look at the whole picture is what I'm saying.
And you hear lots of people worried about the quality of the topsoil, like you said, from hundreds of thousands of years of these large ruminants grazing, there's like was 3 feet of topsoil in the Midwest, thanks to that cycle of pruning the grass, the manure on, the hoof stomping it through, and then rotational because the herds would graze and move on. And that when the grasslands are not healthy and it rains, that all that topsoil can wash away. Versus if you have deep roots, I've seen some cool demonstrations from, I think it was Alan Savory, showing the difference when you put water through that system when there's a strong root system to the grassland versus when the grass is not healthy. And that what the gardener of the grasslands is the ruminants, the grazing ruminants, that you need those things to keep the grasses healthy. And then it, like you said, it
Yeah,
improves the water
exactly.
cycle. It maintains the topsoil. It maintains the nutrient value of the soil that the plants grow in and everything. It's like a self-reinforcing system. Things get healthier when things are healthier.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, you can't take one little aspect of a farm and focus on it and extrapolate it out and make a claim based on one aspect. Like a farm is way too complex to do that.
And so I think another, maybe issue or myth that exists out there is the animal welfare. And so one of the things I love about your farm, it's close by. I always say, like, buy your food from someone you can look in the eye, a place you could go to if you
Hmm.
want. And you've done some very cool community outreach things that literally people can come to the farm and see the animals and see how they're living their lives as, happy grazers should. Tell us more about how you've like opened up the farm for people to come and see how it's done.
Yeah, that's something that I kind of developed over time once I started growing my own food. And it's sounds kind of like woo woo, but there's a spiritual connection I think that happens when you consume the food from the land that you live on. And
Hmm.
it's really special. I mean, if you think about eating those strawberries out of the sad clamshells that came from the unknown place, and I mean, I don't know how much joy that brings you. Maybe it brings you lots, but it doesn't bring me a ton of joy. And you kind of contrast that with like walking through a garden on a summer day and you see this ripe raspberry and you pluck it and you pop it in your mouth right then and there. And like, I know that something magical is happening when you do that. Like, I can't quite describe it, but I'm sure that not only, I mean, is there way more nutrition in that raspberry, but I think there's just something special psychologically that happens to people when they really have a strong, meaningful connection to where their food is coming from. And obviously, this is not possible for everybody because we have a lot of people living in cities, and but I don't think that that needs to just mean okay, then you can't have a connection to food. I really want to do anything I can to help people have that real connection. And so that's why I've always wanted to do events at the farm. We do farm dinners and like we do a tour of the farm and then you can have dinner here afterwards. And we do a kids camp. And then over the last few years of doing the kids camps, we were getting a lot of feedback that the parents were feeling really ripped off and they were asking when
I
their
want to come
adult
too.
farm camp was happening. So last year we did our first version of adult farm camp and it was super fun. And yeah, it's all in an effort to just like open that up to other people that's maybe not accessible to just really develop a meaningful connection to your food, to the source of life, really.
Yeah, and I love that. Like my ancestors just a couple generations ago were on the farm and knew how to keep themselves healthy and didn't need anything outside of their closed system of the farm. Like you said, they had all this wisdom about growing and raising and canning and drying and preserving to survive these super harsh winters in Saskatchewan. Like people were so much intelligence and knowledge there and so resourceful. And now I just feel like, dang it, I live in the city and I feel like all that knowledge has been lost and it drives me crazy that I don't know how to do any of those things. So I didn't get to go to adult farm camp last year. I really hope I can this year. One of my friends did though. So tell me about all of the cool people that you brought together and all of their various expertise and knowledge that they had.
Yeah, I love that you focused on the people because that was the best part about it. I was blown away by the people that came out and they were so gung ho for every single thing that I threw at them. I naively made a ridiculously intense schedule. So the day started with sunrise yoga, and then we launched into hour-long sessions, hour-long workshops about gardening, beekeeping, raising chickens, welding, fencing. I can't even think of it all. Sourdough bread, canning. There was, and this was over 2 days, but still, it was a ton of information. And then it was bookmarked with some fabulous food. We had nice dinners both days. And then I thought we would just have so much energy when I was planning it that I even planned for music in the evening and a film screening on the last day. And anyway, it was so much. But the people that attended, I couldn't believe their energy. Like they were just there for it all and they did not tire out and they were so pumped about everything. And yeah, the connections were super special. At the end of the 2 days, we decided to just kind of go around the circle and just share, and everybody was feeling super connected and just a really nice sense of community. And they were telling me that they needed version two next summer to reconnect with each other. And yeah, it was a really special event.
Yeah, I think that's super cool. And I think I called you my favorite farmer at the start of this because not only do you have the knowledge and the desire to make things better, but you're actually out there doing it. And then you're this great connector of people and things and food and in the city and outside the city and all these people with their areas of expertise, and like you said, the sourdough specialist and the beekeeping people and all these cool things, and bringing people that are of similar parallel minds and similar mindset to like connect in our local community. There's so many cool people here in little old Saskatchewan, that like we need to be
Mm-hmm.
getting to know each other and supporting each other. And even more so now with maybe all of the political nonsense swirling outside of our little bubble. See, people, the maybe silver lining of that, or the positive, is that people are more aware of and motivated to pay attention to where the things they buy are coming from, and more on board with supporting local and keeping more dollars in our local community, which is, I'll take that as a win, if that's what we get out of all of this current chaos that's happening. And that, like we said, there are people that are doing it right. You need to seek them out. We need to get to know each other. And that as consumers, I feel like we have to vote with our dollars. Whatever you want to see more of in the world is what you need to support with your dollars. And so, yes, if grass-fed beef from a local farmer doing it right is slightly more expensive, to me, that's absolutely where I think it's of value to spend my food budget dollars. I think I want to go back to something that you said, that you were talking about joy, the joy from eating real food, the real strawberry, the real raspberry, and the flavors and the connection to it, where it came from, and the joy of cooking and preparing it yourself and doing that with your loved ones and sharing a meal together, all those things. I'm personally passionate about nutrition. It always breaks my heart when I try to get people to eat better, eat real food, and they view it like it's a bad thing, or they're going to be deprived if they don't get to eat garbage junk food anymore. And I'm like, oh, like I just want real food is amazing. And the flavors are so good and it's so enriching to your
Oh
life.
my
And it's
God,
not
yeah.
this, oh, well, you can't eat cupcakes anymore, so your life is going to be so sad. It's like, that drives me
Mm.
crazy. So you
Yeah.
mentioned kids camps. You run yours out on the farm. I've been doing kids camps at Brio the last couple summers as well.
Hmm.
50% CrossFit, and then 50% teaching them how to cook, like trying to get kids on the right path to
Hmm.
understand. And I feel like, again, you and I are like parallel in this of, we have to get them to have some knowledge and some skills, but to have the right understanding and have them value the right things as they grow into young adults into the world. So tell me about the things you do with the kids in the kids camp.
Absolutely. It's such an important piece, and I can't believe how many kids just have absolutely no connection, but they come out here and it's the most natural thing. Like they just ease right into it and they just love it. Last year there was one girl that came, and she was from Calgary actually, and she got into catching grasshoppers. Her and another couple of the kids got into catching grasshoppers, and they were collecting them up, and she just thought that was the most fun game. And I sent her mom a picture, and her mom could not believe it because she said, my kid is terrified of bugs. She's terrified of them. And I said, well, I beg to differ. She's obsessed with these grasshoppers. So yeah, just it's amazing what kids will do. And even like you said about people having that mindset about, oh, I'm going to miss my cupcakes. Like I see people saying, oh, my kids don't like vegetables. But if you get them involved in gardening and like they're picking the vegetables, and, I would be pretty surprised if a kid wouldn't try a vegetable out of the garden. Like I always offer them little snacks and tastes from the garden throughout the week, and they're always super pumped to eat anything at all that I want to offer them. So yeah, it's really cool. So we spend a lot of time playing games and doing crafts and stuff, and then we have a different animal focus each day of the week. So there's chicken day, pig day, cow day, sheep day, and we show them, the animals, and we feed them, and they all get a chance to like pet a chicken or hold a chicken and that kind of thing. And we do gardening stuff with them, and we do a honeybee session, and just, yeah, I mean, it's like just, well, like I said before, giving them that connection to where their food really comes from. It doesn't just magically appear in the fridge or in the grocery store.
Mhm. And I think there's a reverie to that too, when you've seen the animal, you've met the animal, you gave it a pat on the head to understand life begets life, and some things die so that other things can live, and that's the cycle. And I feel like, to eat meat, you should be aware of where it comes from, and you should have some gratitude to the cycle that it takes for that, and that naively trying to take yourself out of that system or pretend that that's not how the cycle of life works doesn't make things live better. You know what I mean?
No, of course not. Yeah, I get that question a lot, and I just think as a society, we've really distanced ourselves from death in all ways. Human death, animal death,
Hmm.
death of any kind.
Yeah.
Like most people are so uncomfortable with it. And I think that's really something that we've lost because it's also a cycle of life and death. And death is perfectly natural and normal, and it's not anything to be terrified of. And I mean, yeah, it's just it's just a totally natural thing. And I think the sooner you can get comfortable with that, the better. But yeah, obviously, like, I mean, the goal here is that we have a super high level of animal welfare, and we don't want our animals to suffer at all. But there is one
Hmm.
necessary thing that has to happen at the end, and we just try to make it short and quick and as painless as possible, and take great care to make sure that that happens. But yeah, obviously, it's a necessary thing, and it's necessary in all models. Like whether you buy it from the grocery store, well, that still happened, but at least when you buy it
Hmm.
from me, you know that that animal only had one bad moment, you know?
Yeah. Lived a good life, one bad moment. Isn't that what they say? Something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So, in terms of taking things out of the system, right? Like monocrop agriculture, where we're growing one type of, it's usually a plant, it's a grain, it's a legume, it's a seed on the land. Talk to me about the contrast versus this holistic management versus monocrop agriculture, what that does to like soil quality, the water, all those sorts of things.
So yeah, the big thing that stands out for me right away is the water, just because maybe that's because that's my background. But yeah, in those systems, tillage is often super common. So you have like a bare soil. And I just think anytime you have a bare soil, you're asking for trouble, because that soil is either going to blow away or it's going to get washed away in a rain event because it's not being anchored down. And anytime you have roots growing in the soil, that's going to act as an anchor. And then you also want to have like a mulch layer. Like uh, my farming mentor, Gabe Brown, he calls it keeping armor on the soil. And I just, it makes me nervous when I see bare soil. It's like somebody going out naked without their clothes on. It's not a good idea, you know. And so the other thing that'll happen is weeds are going to come in right away. Like if you have bare soil, nature hates that, so it's going to quickly put something down there, and it's probably going to be an undesirable thing. So I think it's a good idea to always keep your soil covered, and so we try to do that even on our grain farming side. So we do no-till grain farming. So we have a special seeder that it just cuts through a mulch layer or a thatch layer, and it cuts through that in a thin slice, and it just plants the seed, and then it covers that cut back up. So it really minimizes disturbance that way. And then we do a lot of polycropping. So we'll, instead of growing just one wheat field, we'll grow oats and peas in an intercrop. And we'll usually also plant maybe a third or fourth species in there that is slow maturing species that stays low to the ground. So what that allows us to do is we'll harvest the crop, the oats and peas maybe, and then after we harvest it, there's this green understory that's been growing all along, and it's ready to rock. And then we can bring the cows in. And now the cows have something to eat, and they can fertilize that cropland naturally, and left the root structure there, so there's no erosion. And in the fall, when that stand finally does die and winter kill, now we've got a mulch ready and in place for spring. So it's a pretty beautiful system. Actually, we've been farming land up until now, grain farming land that has been pretty fertile to begin with, just because of the area that it's in. It's kind of that nice chocolate cake type soil. But last fall, we recently purchased some more land closer to Vanscoy, and it's really sandy, really fragile soil that's been damaged from a lot of years of conventional farming. And so we're super excited to put our soil health principles of grain farming to the ultimate test and see if we can actually bring this soil back to life just through that polycropping and animal integration, and just see if we can wake it back up and build some topsoil.
So what's the timeline, do you think, of something like that to bring it back to life?
So this spring, we're going to just seed it to a super complex annual forage. So probably about 15 species of just mixed forage. And we don't have any intention of harvesting anything off of it. So this year, that will just purely be animal feed. So we'll just put the cows on there, cows and sheep, in the summer, and then we'll cut some of it for winter feed, and we'll feed them through the winter on that same land, so that all the fertilizer that comes out of those animals is going to get dropped right in place. And then we'll see what it looks like next year. I mean, I'd be surprised. I'm sure we'll see a huge benefit in 1 year. I don't know if we'd see enough of a benefit to then jump right into doing a cash crop the very next year. But I mean, people are. I have a friend that started doing that a few years ago, and so taking a measurement of your soil's organic matter is pretty getting to be a pretty common thing to keep track of. And he was able to increase his soil organic matter, I think 6 or 7% in about 10 years, which is wild. The scientists that were doing the study with him, they were like, no, this isn't possible. We don't believe you. It's like, well, I mean, show me, it's your study. So it is really incredible what you can do. It's a hopeful story in a sea of bad news. There's a lot of doom and gloom around environment and climate change and carbon and all that. And it's one happy success story that's really possible, that it doesn't seem that far-fetched if people embrace it.
Again, with this, everything is connected and it's all in a cycle. When we're producing food in the wrong way, the environment starts to collapse, but also human health starts to collapse. And then the healthcare system starts to collapse. And then mental health, and all these things go together. Like the way that we're conventionally, industrially, large scale doing these things right now isn't working out well for anybody. you know, Human health,
That's
human
right.
function,
Absolutely.
mental health, soil health, animal welfare, none of these things are going well in the large scale operations. And so then I think it takes one person at a time, someone like you, to say, hey, I can actually do something. I can start with this land and I can make a difference. And then you can, as your business grows and your skills grow and your knowledge grows, you expand, right? Now you have more land. It's more than just the 140 that it started with. And then you start feeding your kids better and you start educating other kids. And then it needs to multiply in the right direction. And I do feel strongly that that happens one person at a time. Or maybe there are people out there doing the work from the public policy perspective, the large scale up top, but like, and thank goodness for them, because that's not me. I'm like a one person at a time. We're in this sea of chronic disease, and we
Mm-hmm.
always describe CrossFit gyms as the lifeboats in the sea of chronic disease. And we're just like one person at a time, like, get in the boat with us, get in the boat. And then it's like, I can help on
For
certain things
sure.
and like social connections and physical function. But then it's like food is, you can't ignore how important food is in that. You can't just out train a bad diet. You can't just do that, do CrossFit and keep eating junk food. It's
Mm-hmm.
not going to work. So then we have to find cool people like you that are nearby and doing food the right way, and have people connect with you, and you connect with people that know how to make bread the right way and make sauerkraut and raise bees the right way, and all this stuff. It all needs to come together so that, you know, the environment gets better, people get better, or the next generation is given the gift of good health and a nice place to live, a nice environment to live in.
Totally, totally. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's all about focusing on your sphere of influence, I think. Somebody
Mm-hmm.
wise told me that a long time ago. It's pretty easy to spiral and think, "Holy man, this whole world is going to hell," and feel just totally miserable about it. But if you can find what you're best at and where you have influence, then just focus on that, because then I can just do my job. I can grow my grass-fed beef and I can help restore people's connection to food. And that's my sphere. And I can totally trust that you are over at CrossFit educating and spreading the good word about that whole thing because I think that's super important. And I can trust that somebody else is worrying about the war and somebody else is worrying about the whales. And, like everybody's got their thing, their passion and their level of expertise. And you just have to trust that if you do your thing good, then somebody else is going to do the other stuff that you're probably also worried about.
And so when you you've done tons of learning, when you have someone that's interested in learning more about the importance of all these topics we've been talking about, food and agriculture and systems and everything, where do you like to send people first in terms of, is there a documentary or a book where you go, start here if you want to start educating yourself?
Yeah, there's a few. So I started with that Joel Salatin author and his book You Can Farm. That's if somebody wants to get into farming. But you mentioned Sacred Cow. That's a
Hmm.
fantastic read for just somebody that's interested in eating grass-fed beef. That documentary, the Biggest Little Farm. I always show that one at kids camp just
Yeah.
to. Have you seen that one? It's so good. Yeah, just to give people
Yeah,
like an
on Netflix, I
understanding
think,
of
right? Yeah.
what a holistic farm looks like. Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's so many good ones. Like, God, and then I love those books like Ultra Processed People and the Dorito Effect and all those ones. Like, just learning about the difference between real food and ultra processed food. Um, there's a ton of really bad information out there, especially on Netflix. There's a ton of really bad documentaries that are spreading lots of misinformation, I think. Like Farmageddon, I think those can be kind of dangerous too. But the other one that I often reference is just Alan Savory's TED Talk. I think it's called Regreening the
Mm.
Desert, and just demonstrates how he's taking land that's literally turning into desert, and he's just totally bringing it around, and it's just lush and green, and supporting life after just maybe one or two seasons. That's pretty profound stuff to watch too.
Correct me if I'm wrong, he did a lot of his in South Africa.
Yeah, exactly.
Was that
Yeah.
him? Yeah.
But I mean, it
Bringing
translates all over.
grasslands. I'm thinking of the right guy. I'm gonna look those up and I'll post them, the links to those things in the show notes. And I think, I've watched some of
Sure.
those documentaries, like you said, Farmageddon and Game Changers or Food Inc. And even we can
Mm-hmm.
recognize and agree on the problems that large scale factory farming is not good. But that I think
100%.
where maybe people different is on, and therefore what should we do about it? Does that mean we should harm
Exactly.
our own health by avoiding animals and then therefore just eating all the products of monocrop agriculture? I don't think that solves any problems. That just makes humans sick and makes the land worse. So,
Totally.
we can agree that large scale is not the way, but then I think if you educate yourself and you understand how these things work, then therefore, like I said, we should be seeking out people like you and supporting people doing it the right way and voting with our dollars so that then everybody wins, right? Get your hands on better quality meat, get grass fed beef and the pastured pork and the healthy eggs so that you thrive as a human. The local community is doing better
Mm-hmm.
because you keep your food dollars nearby, and the animals and the land and the water, all those things are better. So then that's like win, win, win all the way around. And we can, I
Of
think
course.
what causes change in business, regulation does some stuff, but I just truly feel like whatever we vote for with our dollars is what continues. So I
For
want you to
sure.
keep doing more of what you do. So then, therefore, people need to support your business. That's how that works.
Yeah, it's true. And I mean, not that you ever want crises to happen, but it seems like it's a lot of times during things like COVID weirdness or like these US relations right now, that is kind of the moment that a lot of people will re-examine their buying habits. And I remember grocery panic times of COVID, people would phone me frantically, "Do you sell grass-fed beef?" I'm like, "Yeah." "Well, how could I get it?" It's like, well, just order it and I'll get you some. Or with this upset of trade, it's like that doesn't affect me. Like there's nothing about that affects my
Mm-hmm.
business. And so businesses like that are super resilient when the world is kind of in disarray. So that's a super assuring thing to know that you will be fed. There's, I don't know if you're familiar with the Wandering Market, but it's a cool business. She has a bricks and mortar store in Moose Jaw, but it started up kind of like a pop up farmers market. And her slogan is something like Saskatchewan feeds me. And Saskatchewan can
Oh yeah.
feed itself. Like it's fine. We have so much food here and nobody has to panic. I mean, you might have to change your eating habits a little bit. You might not get to eat bananas 365 days a year kind of thing, but there's tons of other fruit you can eat and there's so much food here.
Remember looking around Costco and you see it tells you product of where all the produce comes from. And I was like, you're just never going to convince me that me eating mangoes in January imported from Peru is more environmentally friendly than me eating beef that grazed on a farm 20 minutes from my house. Like, it's just not going to happen, you know? The
Totally.
trucking, the shipping, the
Yeah, I
lower
mean
quality,
it
they don't even taste as good. Like,
Yeah, if you live in a place like that, of course, you're going to be gorging yourself on mangoes. And why wouldn't you? Like that makes tons of sense. And it goes for Saskatchewan too.
mhm,
Like when the garden is really rocking in the summer, we eat tons of fruits and vegetables. But in the wintertime, it's just not part of our natural diet, I don't think. I mean, that's not what our ancestors would have
mhm,
eaten that would have lived here.
yeah. I think, people love to give different types of diets names or they'll call them a fad as like a pejorative kind of thing. And, the carnivore diet and they'll go well, what's carnivore? What's a ketogenic diet for that matter? It's just winter. It's just the period of time where there's
That's
not a lot
right.
of plants around, but you have animals. Like that's just a natural part of staying alive in various climates that humans are meant
Totally.
to enjoy things plentifully when they're in season and the fruits are up for like a couple weeks of the year and then other times where they're not at all and then it's perfectly natural to have a huge variability in your diet. I have a
Hmm.
nutrition 101 course and in there I have 5, I call them crimes against nutrition, and one of them is eating the exact same thing every day. I think that's one of the most unnatural
Hmm.
things imaginable, eating the same things in the same amounts every day.
Hmm.
As much as people like to be like, you got to be consistent, have your habits and your routine and eat your 5 meals a day and these many macros and these calories. I was like, but that's the complete opposite of what humans are naturally evolved and adapted to thrive on. So we should have this
Of course.
seasonal
Yeah.
variability in the things that we eat and shouldn't expect to be able to eat bananas 365 days a year. It's not a natural way of existing.
I think the same can be said for the animals though too, and that's why I think our pasture-raised pork is healthier. They're not eating the same thing every day, and I always tell the kids that at kids camp when I show them the pigs and we feed them like waste out of the garden, and they have a big field that they can just go out and eat roots, and if they find a snake or a mouse or something, I'm sure they'll be eating that, and they're just eating a wide variety of things in addition to grain that we give them access to. But I always ask the kids, do you guys eat oatmeal ever? And lots of them say, yeah. And I said, do you like it? Yeah, they like it. And then I said, what would you say if I told you you had to eat oatmeal for breakfast, lunch, and supper? And they were like, oh, I don't know if I want to do that. And then I said, what if you had to eat that for breakfast, lunch, and supper every day for the rest of your life? And they really don't like that idea. And so that's
Yeah.
what I think it is with the pigs, though. Like, I mean, a pig raised in a pig barn is literally eating the exact same ration for its whole entire life. And I just think that's
Mhm.
tragic. Like that's not how pigs were designed. And I just think that's so depressing. So of course they're super pumped every time I bring them a fun new snack or, I bring them something, some vegetable peels or some waste from the garden, some weeds that I've pulled out or something. They're just super happy. So yeah, variety is the spice of life for sure.
And isn't that the ultimate recycling program? Like you said, things that are just otherwise waste can get upcycled into healthy fats and proteins. Okay, so let's talk about how people can get in touch with you, find your business, order things, participate in your fun events. Where can people follow you? Where can they find you?
Our website is farm140.ca, and the 140 part is spelled out, so it's not numerical. It's farm140.ca, and that's where you can order online. We have a shop page there. So a lot of people buy in bulk from us. They'll buy like a side of pork or a side of lamb or a quarter or an eighth of beef. That's quite typical, but you can buy in smaller quantities as well. And we do have a little store on the farm, but it's open by appointment only. So if you want to visit the store and shop by the cut, I just ask you to send me an email or send me a message ahead of time to make sure that the time works. And on social media, it's the same handle, Farm140, the 140 being spelled out. And that's usually where we'll post about events. But we also have a newsletter. So if you go to our website and scroll to the bottom, you can sign up to our newsletter. And I definitely promise I won't email bomb you. I'm pretty lucky if I get one sent out a month or once every 2 months. But that is a good way to find out about events and things going on at the farm. And yeah, I love it when people first discover the farm if they can make it out to an event because, like I've said several times on this talk, it's all about the connection. So usually when people come out for a tour of the farm for an event and then that connection is made, then it's just a totally different experience every time after that you open up a package of steaks or consume something from this farm.
Mhm.
You just have that mental image of like, I know where this was raised and I can picture it in my head. So yeah, come out to a farm dinner this summer, come out to adult farm camp or send your kids.
And you said your products are at Little Market Box, at Sask Made, and also conveniently in the freezer right at CrossFit Brio.
Yes.
When the chickens are laying, Arlie will bring us fresh eggs. People fight over them. They like get mean. They throw elbows. It's full contact to try to get the good eggs. They want to know. They're like, tell me the
There's a
second she drops them off. You like, put some aside for me.
there's a new workout program for you. You could have a fight club and you could fight over the eggs. That's a great idea.
Fight over the eggs. Yeah. You just restocked the freezer for us. What else is in there right now? Do you remember what you popped in for people to try?
I'm sure there's ground beef in there, beef stew. I'm sure there's bacon in there with that good fat that stays solid at room temperature. I think there's going to
Yep.
be some sausages in there. I think there was some bones if you want to make nice bone broth, some organ meats that I know some people find terrifying, but man, I tell you, if you can figure out a way to get those into your body will thank you for that. And actually, it's a product that is not at CrossFit, but I do make a product that's a ground beef blended with organ meats. So it's an enriched ground beef, and it's just a way to get beef heart, liver, kidney into your body, and you don't even really taste it. It's mixed in with the ground, so it just tastes like normal ground beef.
Mm-hmm. I am all about trying to get people to eat organ meats. And I say this as a person that like I don't personally like to eat liver. So I understand that people don't like the taste or they think it's gross or they didn't grow up eating it, so they just aren't accustomed to it. So I'm always trying to find ways to hide it. Put it in the chili, like you said, blend it in with the ground
Mm-hmm.
beef or the frozen liver. I'm notorious for just like cutting out chunks and swallowing them whole. Frozen liver
Yeah,
chunks, I take them like capsules, that kind of stuff to just try to get it in
yeah,
you. It's so nutritious, so good for you. You don't
totally.
need a B12 supplement. You don't need an iron supplement. You don't need a B vitamin complex. You just need to eat beef and whole animal nutrition, the bone broth, the organs,
Hmm.
all that good stuff all together. I think a cow
It's so
is
true.
the only food source that you can meet all human nutritional requirements from one thing, a ruminant.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. That's really interesting. I
Yeah.
could see it though.
Yeah. Even fresh meat and especially liver has enough vitamin C that in the absence of when you're eating lots of
Hmm.
carbohydrate, you can meet vitamin C requirements and not get scurvy. So, fun facts for you there.
Wow. That's cool.
Yeah, so I strongly encourage people to try the things that are in the freezer at Brio or like single purchase items if you want to try the bacon, try the ground beef, try the sausages, and then through your website you can do bulk orders. Many times I've done the 50-pound boxes of ground beef because my two boys just go through that stuff like crazy. It comes packaged all nicely in 1 pound chunks, so super easy to just like pull them out of the freezer. Like you said, you can do large amounts, half cow, half lamb, larger amounts. Are there certain times of year that it's better if you want to do a large animal or bulk order when the butchering is happening?
Kind of. We usually have it, we beef and lamb, we start processing in about November, December, and then we'll process kind of all throughout the winter and into the spring. And now we're just on the tail end of our beef and lamb from the last crop, I guess you can say. So we will be sold out of beef and lamb throughout some of the summer months, probably from say June to November again, and then we'll have that next round. And then the pork is more so available year round, but again, sometimes we'll be sold out. If you go on our website and order something, usually there will be a little note about processing time and timeline, and then usually I'll send you an email within a few days of ordering and tell you, hey, just a heads up, I'll have this ready for you. and I'll give you an idea of when that's going to be. But sometimes I'll have it in stock and you'll order it and I'll just get it to you a couple days later. It just depends what I have in inventory.
And then, like you said, people can either come out to the farm or you deliver to drop off locations in the city, correct?
That's right. So yeah, when you on the checkout page, you have the option to pick up at the farm for free, or I do a clustered delivery at Saskmade Marketplace, or I'll deliver to your home, and there's the delivery for fee for that. But yeah, Saskatoon delivery is definitely available.
I've met you in a parking lot to pick up a box of grass-fed ground beef out of the back of a truck. I kind of like it. It's like doing
Yeah,
a drug
it's
deal,
got
but it's the best beef
that
on earth. It's got that personal touch to it. That's for
living
sure.
dangerously.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, Arlie, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I learned lots of things. I learned some cool things about you and about farming and how you're doing stuff. So people should definitely give you a follow on Instagram, Farm140. Go to the website, check out the things you can buy, the cool events you're doing, purchase some things through the freezer right here at Brio. You even pay Arlie directly when you do that. I'm not even involved in that process. So you can support locals direct from food to the farmer. And I swear we've talked about this, we're going to make it happen this year about organizing a Brio event at the farm. You said we could go do like a farm workout and do some labor and then have a
Absolutely.
good meal and tour the farm and do that kind of stuff. I would love to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, we got to get that set up for sure. And yeah, thank you so much, Jocelyn, for being a champion for this stuff. We need people like you to fix this broken food system, and you're doing your thing in your sphere of influence. And I'm a huge fan of everything you guys are doing over there. So keep up the good work.
Well, thank you. Right back at you. Thanks for your time today, Arlie. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks. Take care.